April is Child Abuse Month. In 2021 alone, 15,000 Oklahoma children were identified as abuse victims. Today, we're debunking some myths about abuse that are still all too common. Child abuse survivor Walt McKinley is the author of the book Monsters in My House. It's a true story of his own experience and victory over abuse, allowing him to go on to have a career as a naval intelligence officer and business leader. And Walt joins us live via Zoom with 4 common myths about child abuse. And Walt, first of all, so sorry about what happened to you as you were a child, an innocent child, but it's fantastic that you've overcome it and are now helping others. Now, we don't have time to delve into your whole story, but what would you like people to know about your experience?
I just want people to know your history doesn't define your legacy. And where you start doesn't have to be where you finish. You can overcome your trauma and live an abundantly happy life because of it.
And that's great that that's happened to you. And you've worked as an advocate to prevent child abuse and have a list of common myths. And our first one is that it's difficult to spot child abuse.
It's not difficult to spot child abuse. People think of the physical nature of bruises that aren't always evident because a lot of times they're under clothes. But you can see behavioral changes, grades change, appearance of kids change, they have mood swings, depression, they're emotionally detached. There's a lot of ways, if we're paying attention, to recognize it.
And the second myth focuses on parents and the belief that they are always the ones who are responsible for the abuse.
So generational trauma happens 78% of the time within families. And so it can be anybody. It can be the parent, it could be a sibling, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle. But the reality is it could also be anybody in that child's life, coaches, teachers, just to name a few.
All right. And the second myth focuses, or rather the third myth involves the fear that children have in reporting their abuser.
So I had an opportunity to report my father as my abuser at 10 years old. But because I had been abused by every adult, including foster families I had came into contact with, I was terrified to say anything, even when asked by police and a guidance counselor. And so children just typically won't tell for fear of retribution.
That is infuriating to hear that that happened to you. It happens to so many kids. Now let's talk about the last myth now. All child abuse is physical. What's the reality?
The reality is 59% of all child abuse is emotional abuse or neglect. Those unseen things that make children feel unloved, they make them feel unseen, they make them feel like they just don't even matter. And those things manifest themselves in adults as self-doubt and self-limiting beliefs if we don't take care of those.
And Walt, with your experience, with all that you're doing, with your speaking and so forth, what is your hope with child abuse, the end of child abuse? Do you see hope in that ever ending?
I do. And so in a utopian world, I would never have anything to talk about because we would eradicate child abuse. The reality is we need to continue to help those hurt people heal from their wounds so that they don't continue the generational cycles that have perpetuated our society since the beginning of time.
Well, thank you for what you're doing for all of our children, and also thank you for your service. We really appreciate you being here. And our thanks to author and speaker Walt McKinley. Once again, his book is titled Monsters in My House, and you can find out more about his journey at waltmckinley.com. The pandemic uprooting many of our